This is the lecture for Carol Ravane's Reductionism, Self-Constitution, and the Moral Significance of Personal Identity. So you'll notice the first word in the chapter is reductionism, and there's a sense in which she's using this term. Well, there's an obvious sense in which she's using this term in a different way than we've seen it used, because as she will say somewhere, maybe not explicitly. I think, well, that she uses this phrase, the reductionist account of personal identity, throughout the article. And when she uses that, she's referring to sort of the account of personal identity that she's giving here. So she calls it the reductionist account of personal identity. That's a different sense of reductionism than we've seen in the course so far, because reductionism is sort of like a broad label that applies to Parfit and people who agree with him on various things. And we've seen a bunch of like arguments back and forth about reductionism from Wolf and Jeske and Korsgaard and Parfit and stuff, although I'm not sure Parfit used the term or not. And so you don't want to, like when Rovane talks about reductionism, usually she's not talking about like, Parfit and the people who agree with him. Rather, she's talking about like a more narrow or even just like a different group, which is like her. She's just talking about like her specific theory that she's proposing here. And so that's reductionism in a different sense. But there's also like, she's not uh, making a mistake by using this word or something. She wants her, like the reason she uses reductionism as the label for her view is that she thinks her view is sort of like the correct way of understanding reductionism. Earlier, remember we've seen, for instance, Wolf saying, oh no, reductionism doesn't lead to the conclusions that Parfit wants. And here we have something sort of similar. Rovane saying, look, if we sort of understand reductionism about personal identity, it's going to lead us to the theory I'm proposing here, not necessarily to Parfit. She sort of half agrees with Parfit and half disagrees. Um, a lot of what she's doing here is sort of taking Parfit and Korsgaard, both of whom we read, and trying to get like a middle ground between them, or even not a middle ground, but like a third possibility that's kind of uniting parts of the two, drawing from both of them, but different from both of them. So this is just like the number one thing to know going in is that you want to be trying to figure out what Rovane's like view is. Like she has an interesting view that's not any of the ones we've seen, but like it's its own separate thing. And just be aware that she's calling it the reductionist account of personal identity. So be aware of that. And then also like as you're trying to figure out her view, as she says a few times, it's this chapter gives you a picture of it, but it's a little fuzzy. So you'll probably have questions by the time you get to the end, and that's going to be fine. So you know, obviously try to figure out what she's saying and everything, but it can maybe be tough to figure out exactly where we're supposed to end up by the end. Um, Maybe a bit more than some of the other articles we've read. So just be prepared for that.